What is going on, everyone? We're back again with another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Cincinnati Reds team because honestly, this team was really solid this year, and I think they're going to get even better next year. So the 2023 Cincinnati Reds went 82-80, only missed the playoffs by 2 games, I'm pretty sure, because they were right under the Cubs, and then Arizona and Miami were at 84 wins. Just barely missed the playoffs. They did lose some key series at the end of 2023 that they probably should have won, which probably would have put them over, unfortunately. The Reds came into this season really solid across the board. I mean, there was a time that they were in first place for a little bit in the NL Central, which was very exciting. But throughout the whole season, they ended up finishing 82 wins and 80 losses. Going into next year, this team could definitely make a playoff spot. We already know that the Reds have called up most of their prospects. They still have some of them in the minor leagues, but a lot of the guys are pretty much on the team. But I'm really excited seeing this team move forward. I think they're going to be really solid across the board. And even some of their prospects, I mean, are still pretty good. So let's jump into those prospects right now while we're talking about them. I mean, Marte is a really solid one. I think he did play a little bit in 2023. I don't really remember him as much, to be honest, because I didn't really watch much Reds baseball at the end of 2023. But even if you look at some of the 2024 guys, obviously the Reds first round draft pick, he's expected to be up in 2024, which is actually pretty insane to think about. He's only in high A, which is kind of insane to think about. But they only have 3 guys that are supposed to be up here, so it's really interesting. Like I said, most of their guys have already been called up, so that's why it's not really too much of a surprise. So they have a couple guys that might come up throughout the season, but honestly, this Reds team looking forward, I think, can be very solid. Just because last year they exploded with popularity. I mean, I think there were a lot of people that were showing up to the games. A lot of people were talking about this team last year. The team was very exciting to watch. Towards, I think it was May, they started to get pretty good across the board, and then they just started to win. Definitely, this team got a lot more eyes on them, and honestly, I think it's time for them to get back in the postseason, because a lot of these guys were just exciting to watch. I mean, elly, cruz was very exciting to watch. I mean, he had so many plays and highlights across the league in general that were promoted like crazy. So he was a very fun player to watch. I mean, even guys like Spencer Steer were extremely exciting to watch. Benson, obviously, Marte a little bit towards the end of the season, we're excited to watch. Jonathan India, one of their best probably players in general, who, you know, they were talking about trading him, which they didn't end up doing, and then I think he's now in the arbitration talks with them. He was a really interesting piece. But yeah, Jonathan India is a great player. Tyler Stephenson as well, the catcher. Obviously, they just signed German Candelario from the Cubs, who he had a pretty good season last year with the Nationals and the Cubs. He gets on a 3-year contract with the Reds. That's going to be pretty exciting to see for him. I think he can do a solid job with them. I think he was definitely one of those like underlooked players on the Nationals, because obviously they weren't good. Cubs picked him up, you know, obviously big market, able to prove himself, and obviously able to get a contract with the Reds. So he's going to be very exciting to watch. And I think one of the guys we got to talk about in this bullpen is Alexis Diaz. I mean, this guy was absolutely insane across the board, and he was obviously in that World Baseball Classic a little bit as well. Pitched pretty well, and coming into this season, man, he got every save, it looked like. I only think he blew in a couple saves the whole season, and he was really solid. Definitely talked about as the best closer of the year. Obviously behind guys like, you know, Felix from the Orioles. I think even the Giants closer was up there a little bit too. He was a really solid piece in that bullpen. Then obviously we look towards the starting pitching with Hunter Greene, Nick Lodoto, even Ashcraft a little bit. They just signed Frankie Montas as well in this rotation. So very exciting who's going to be in here. So taking a look at the Reds' financial situation, obviously they haven't really spent that much money on this squad. You know, if we take everything into account, obviously these numbers don't have the Montas contract, the Suter contract, the Buck Farmer contract, or the Candelario contract. So we do have to take that into account. We're going to add everything up though, so it should be pretty solid with these numbers right now. But this team is also paying a lot of buyouts as well. They're paying the Will Myers, the Joey Votto, and the Mike Moustakas buyout. And then Kurt Kiesis's buyout is also $750K. So it's definitely going to add up. So after doing the calculations for this team, adding in how much money they're spending with all the buyouts and then all the other players they got, it's about $113.9 million on this team if everything stands with the arbitration right now. So that's how much they're going to be spending in 2024 once you add everything in. So they have spent a decent amount of money on this squad compared to their last year's salary. So I think it's pretty solid. And I do think this team is very solid to win. I do have a lot of faith in Candelario and Montas. I think Montas is going to have a great year this year. Obviously injured that previous season, only pitched I think like 1 inning. Have a whole lot. I know the Reds bumped his contract up a decent amount from what he was making on the Yankees, which is pretty interesting. I don't really agree with that, but hey, I mean, I know they want another pitcher, so they got to pay a little bit extra, so I don't really blame them for doing that. But the contracts on this team are really not insane. Everyone's pretty much in arbitration, it looks like, especially pre-arbitration. A lot of guys in pre-arbitration right now. Very young squad, like we mentioned. We got a couple guys like Jonathan India, Stephenson, kind of those guys, Lucas Sims, kind of in the arbitration category, and then everyone else is on contract, like Hunter Greene's contract, Pagan's contract, Martinez's contract, and then May's contract. So a couple guys on contract, and obviously the 4 players that got signed that we just mentioned. So yeah, the team's looking pretty solid. I do have a lot of faith in this team, but they were paying $12.6 million in buyouts, which isn't really the best in my opinion, but I do think they have done this right. So yeah, looking at the Reds' total financial situation, I do like it. You know, they have spent almost, you know, about $120 million on this squad. I do think they're in a good position right now to even get more players if they ever wanted to. So I do like where the Reds are at, and I do think they are going to be really strong in this NL Central division. And I think just looking at all the pieces that this team is going to have, I mean, I'm very excited to see where this squad's going to be at. I mean, obviously we know they haven't made a ton of signings, only just the 2 I think I mentioned, but they're going to go off like the Orioles strategy, I think, which is they're going to let their rookie talent kind of shine this year, which I could definitely see them doing. We also do have the trade deadline, which they can make a lot of moves there, which we've seen, teams that really use that in the past. Texas Rangers, for example, they don't make the moves they made at that deadline, they probably don't win the World Series, in my opinion, because a lot of those players were really solid that they needed. For depth and other reasons and just performance in general, those guys were really solid. But yeah, I think my prediction for this Cincinnati Reds squad, I think they're going to get in. I think they're going to get in the playoffs. It's not going to be easy for the Reds. They're definitely going to have to battle through this, and they're definitely going to have to be a solid team to even get a shot, because we do in their division is going to be very tough this upcoming season, with the Milwaukee Brewers improving, with the Cubs improving, but even it's not going to be easy for them. They obviously have the Brewers, who won the division last year, improving on their success. The Cubs obviously made some pretty good signings. Even the Pirates look really solid this season, and I definitely think can do some damage. And then obviously St. Louis made some pretty good pitching moves across the board. So everyone in the division is getting better. So are they, but we'll see who is going to come out on top. This division is going to be a bloodbath, I think, for the last games. It might be like the AL East, honestly, the further we get into this offseason. But if they can jump the Cubs and they can compete with the Brewers, I definitely think they got a shot for this postseason. Because looking at the NL wildcard, I really don't see Miami in this. I talked about this again in their video. Miami is just not it anymore. And I think we'll see Philadelphia and Arizona back in this wildcard. I think Atlanta's probably win the division. The Dodgers probably win the division. I think it's going to be 2 Central teams, 2 East teams, 2 West teams, honestly. I do think that is going to be the matchup that we see this season play out, just because I think when you look at it, for example, I don't think San Diego, the Giants, they're not really ready, to be honest, compared to like the Dodgers and Arizona. They're not. Pittsburgh, I don't really think is. Same with St. Louis. And then from the East, I mean, the Mets, Washington, Miami, I don't think are either. I think it's going to be 2 teams from each division this year, and I wonder if the Reds will be able to sneak in there. It's going to be tough, though. We'll see what happens throughout the season, but that's my prediction. I do think they get that 6th seed. Them and the Cubs are going to be fighting the whole season with the Brewers and everyone in that division, honestly. But it's going to be pretty insane to see throughout the season. I mean, we saw a crazy NL Central this last season. I mean, all the teams were in it at one point, and then obviously they were weeded out. But man, it's going to be a bloodbath, I think, in this NL wildcard race again. A lot of teams are going to be in here, and it should be pretty exciting. But if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Where do you guys see this Reds team? Do you guys see them in the playoffs? Where do you see this team at? With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, everyone.